Welcome to Inside the Sales Playbook, where on each and every episode, we dive into the actual sales processes, the plays, and strategies working for sales teams today. No high level overview. We get into the actual weeds of what some of the fastest growing and most successful sales teams are doing today to drive revenue and grow their business. And we've got two sponsors of the Inside the Sales Playbook show. The first is Sales Kit. Sales Kit takes the guesswork out of scaling your sales knowledge all on one great platform, makes it easier than ever for your sales team to find the missing SOPs, templates, emails, calling scripts that they need to access but don't always can sift through different Dropbox folders, drives, or Word documents. SalesKit makes it easy to access the sales knowledge that actually works. You can sign up for a free trial at getsaleskit.com. And we're sponsored by my book, Raise Your Standards, the definitive guide to building seven-figure sales. You can get a free copy of our book to help grow your sales, whether you're an entrepreneur, a sales leader, or a sales contributor at getsaleskit.com/book. I'm your host, Mark Evans, and today I'm here with the author of Close Deals Faster, the CEO of Vaster Strategies, a sales training company that's trained over 70,000 salespeople, a sought-after speaker on the Vistage Circle, as well as many others, and not to mention a graduate of the United States Naval Academy, and our first guest who is an actual former submarine commander, Mr. John Asher. John, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you on the show.
Great to be on the show, Mark. Thanks so much for inviting me.
My pleasure, my pleasure. Well, as John and I were talking before I hit record here, I've actually had the privilege of experiencing an Asher sales training a couple of years ago when I was in my corporate career. Really great experience. Dave Potts was the instructor and just did an awesome job, made the material, while it's very approachable, he made the class and training very light. So if you ever want to check out some training, and we'll dive into kind of who's a great fit for your training and the sales process and systems that you prescribe. But John, how about you give the listeners a little bit of context? What is Asher Strategies? What is the whole thought behind Close Deals Faster? And how do you help your clients achieve their sales mission?
Well, I learned way back when I was a sales pup, so to speak, from a sales manager who had this saying he would beat into us, easy to remember because it rhymes, and that is money flows where focus goes. Money flows where focus goes. And so if you think about it, it applies really to all aspects of business, and of course applies to salespeople as well. So a quick example would be, it's much better to pick a few top prospects and give them a lot of touches than the opposite, and that is pick a whole bunch of prospects and give them a few touches. So just one example of money flows where focus goes.
Yeah.
And so therefore, for our company, we only focus on three things for customers. One is an aptitude assessment, which you took, as you know, and it essentially measures how many genes people have for sales. And based on a meta-analysis of many, many studies by large sales organizations, HR organizations, aptitude, our natural talent for sales, accounts for 50% of the sales results.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. And the other 50% is all the other stuff, the product knowledge, the sales skills, the motivation, and the process and technology, like your sales kit that supports the sales process. So that's the first thing we focus on, is helping people understand their natural talent for sales, and of course how to stretch from areas where they may be weak. And that dovetails nicely with increased levels of emotional intelligence. The second thing we offer is, of course, the sales training, which you experience. And then the third is all the reinforcement techniques, the webinars, the sales coaching of sales managers, the videos, and those sorts of activities. So just keep it simple, keep it focused, three things.
Yeah, I really like that. Those three things: aptitude, sales training, and then reinforcement, the critical reinforcement or follow-up, right? But let's start kind of from the beginning. So how the heck does an individual who graduates from the United States Naval Academy and is studying nuclear engineering, of all the things you could have done, of all the things nuclear engineers do, John, how the heck did you even get into sales? Take me there.
Well, so if you buy Dan Pink's book, To Sell Is Human,
yeah,
right? We're all in sales. We're selling ourselves. We're selling our ideas. We're selling to the boss is selling to us. We're selling to the bank to get more capital. The banks are selling to us to get our business. So we're essentially all in sales.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you get going in your Navy career, they really call it leadership, but there's a real big overlap between leadership and sales. So, for example, the why of our company is making the complex simple. And that's because 6 of the 7 of us partners, including Dave, one of the 7, that's our own personal mantra. So when I got to my first nuclear sub as an ensign, I was in charge of the reactor control operators. Very critical division, obviously, controlling a reactor plant. And they were really good and well trained on how to respond to a single casualty. They were not very good at how about if you have a dual casualty, 2 things happening at once.
And when you say casualty, are you meaning like an air or a system malfunction or something like that? Okay.
Exactly. Flooding, fire, electronic malfunction, whatever happens.
All of that sounds very bad on a nuclear sub. That doesn't sound good.
Not too good at all. And so I took it upon myself to start training them on how to respond to dual casualties. And to do that, I had to drop back and go back into reactor physics and make reactor physics simple for them, because most of them did not have a college degree, so that they could respond to those dual casualties. And so to get them to accept that and participate in it, that was a sales job.
Because I would imagine, right, in the Navy, if I understand this correctly, an ensign is directly after you leave the Navy Academy.
Right.
And I would imagine you're a younger individual at that time, probably leading a team that has been in the Navy for much longer than you and probably much older. Is that fair to say?
Not all, but certainly some.
Okay.
So then my last job in the Navy, I was in the Pentagon as a buyer of a big $2 billion software development program.
Wow.
And when you're a buyer for any service in any of the acquisition commands, you have 3 jobs. You're the program manager, so you have to manage the program. You're a buyer, so your staff puts out RFPs, companies bid on them, you choose one, you supervise their performance, and you're totally a salesperson. You got to keep the program sold. You got to fight off budget cuts from the Navy and DOD, and you got to go over and schmooze the staffers on the Senate and House Armed Services Committee to protect your program. So you're totally a salesperson.
So even if it just gets in, that's no guarantee that it's going to have a long life inside of the Navy or inside of some of these other bureaucratic organizations.
You got to do studies to demonstrate the ROI of your system and sell it to the bosses. Just like a commercial salesperson has to show the ROI of their new system or their new process or their new technology. So I learned to sell in the Pentagon.
That can't be an easy place. I would imagine if you can do it there, you can do it anywhere.
Well, the trouble with the Pentagon is there's 17 people on average who can say no. You got to get them all to say yes.
Yep, that's not an easy road to haul. I really like that. Well, John, how about we transition a little bit? I thank you for walking us through your career there. In your opinion, you see a lot of companies. Like I mentioned before, you've trained over 70,000 salespeople. That's pretty awesome. I grew up in a town of like 6,000. So to think all of those people times 10 have gone through your training is pretty cool. What in your opinion, John, is really separating the mediocre sales teams right now from the great sales organizations, especially as we come out of COVID and have to adjust to this new, let's call it this new reality, right? This new world.
Well, number one, if you drop back and take a look at the Harvard data, Harvard has the biggest research department of any university on sales, by the way. They have for 40 plus
really?
years. Oh, they have a ton of data. And so Harvard has 2 80-20 rules that apply to salespeople based on their research. One is, of the 25 million salespeople in the U.S. right now, 20%, 5 million, are elite. 80% are fairly average, or depending on your verbiage, crappy. Their turnover rate actually is a third per year.
Wow.
The second 80-20 rule is the top 20%, those 5 million, bring in 80% of the new business. So now when you look at what is it about those 5 million elite salespeople, They have 5 factors all in alignment. We've talked about them already, actually. Brilliant product knowledge, right? They really know what they're talking about. They can really add value to prospects and suspects.
And you said brilliant product knowledge, not just, oh, they understand the product, but this sounds like a high level understanding of not only the product, but how I would understand probably, right, how the buyer's going to use it, what's their pains, challenges. Is that fair to say?
It's fair to say, and there's a couple of other spins on that, and that is in many technology companies now, the real rainmaker is the SME or subject matter expert, because in many cases they're selling to SMEs in the customer's organization. That's one trend you're seeing. And the other aspect is in some cases, like we train in Oracle. So the Oracle sales guys are brilliant. They very well trained. They know all 6 products. They know the purpose of the product. They know the ROI stories. But if a very senior CIO wants to peel back the onion on the software, then they bring in a sales engineer. Well, in some cases, that product knowledge that's brilliant is a combination of 2 people, the salesperson and the technical backup person. In many companies called the sales engineer. So product knowledge, number 1. Number 2, aptitude that we talked about earlier. 3, selling skills, like our training. 4, motivation. And motivation is complex. There's 3 aspects to it. One is the internal motivation we all have, just based on our personality.
Okay.
For example, mine on a scale from 0 to 100 is 95%.
Wow.
So when I wake up and my feet hit the deck, I'm in 5th gear already. My wife's is 5%.
Okay.
You can't even talk to her before she's had 2 cups of coffee.
Funny how opposites attract.
Exactly. And so that's the first aspect of motivation, our own internal motivation. The second is external factors can affect our motivation. For example, the mess we're in right now with COVID. And 3, our sales manager has big impact on our motivation.
Really?
So when you look at all these various Gallup studies, the first one was a study of 3 million people and 800,000 managers. And the name of the book is First Break All the Rules. And it's a funny name. What it really means is what you thought it took to be a great manager ain't necessarily so. So rule 1 is get everybody on the right seat on the bus based on natural talent. So find out what people are really great at and get them a job doing that. Second, find out what people aren't good at. Go try to fix them. It's like they're unfixable. And so in other words, manage around it or team people up. And then the third rule that applies to what we're talking about is people will stay in a bad company with a great manager. They will not stay in a great company with a bad manager. So our manager has a big effect on our motivation. So motivation has those 3 components: our internal motivation, external, what's going on in the world, and who's our sales manager and how are they helping us or actually ignoring us or hindering us. And then the 5th, kind of like your sales kit idea, it's all the process and technology to support the salespeople. So when you see all 5 of those in alignment, that's strong correlation to the elite salespeople.
Yeah.
When they're not all in alignment, that's the 20 million. And in our experience, training 80,000 of them, so we have a lot of data, and they all took that aptitude assessment. It's usually lack of aptitude, lack of skills, or a combination of both.
So lack of aptitude plus a lack of skills or a combination.
Yeah. So lack of either just lack of aptitude or just lack of skills or a combination of both.
Yeah.
Now there's other ways to screw things up. In other words, the company can screw things up from a process standpoint. Let's take an example. Let's say you're in a company and you've got this natural gene for hunting, and the process in your company is if you kill it, you eat it. In other words, if you close a deal, you become the account manager.
Yeah, we've seen that. That's a common setup for most organizations.
Common setup. Well, so now we got Mark all bogged down in account management of 8 accounts and hunting 10% of the time, when in fact he should be hunting 80% of the time. So in other words, that's a failure of process by the company.
Yeah, and structure. I really like that. I can think of examples in my past as well as other companies I've been exposed to that I'll say like handcuff or hamper, right? We say, hey, here's what you're best at. Now go do and spend 80% of your day doing the other things that you're not good at. And, don't concentrate on the 20% you're good at, which seems very backwards to a lot of organizations, but that's where many people find themselves in today.
Exactly, and it's so that's an example of the company screwing things up.
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, I could
Process
certainly see that.
standpoint.
And anything else with that?
No, just real strong correlation to the 5 million elite salespeople and all 5 factors being in alignment, and the 20 million who are not doing so well. And what's usually the problem, and it's again usually aptitude, or you'd be shocked at how many salespeople in our country have never had sales skills training.
I totally believe it.
It's
Yeah.
unbelievable.
So let's transition a little bit. So now with this aptitude and with these studies, has anything changed since COVID and has anything changed either with this structure or with these kind of studies in your perspective since COVID, or should sales organizations be changing due to COVID?
There's a couple of big picture things that have really changed. One is I'm talking B2B sales or B2G government,
Okay.
not so much salespeople at Macy's or just companies just based on their website or restaurants. I'm really talking about business to business or business to government.
And traditionally higher level sales, is that correct? Your experience has been, $2 billion program management, like we talked about one of your trainers, Dave. Large scale government systems or large scale entities. So would you say that's where it only applies to, or would you say, hey, if you have a smaller price point, some of these elements can apply as well?
Oh yeah, any size company that's selling business to business or business to government.
Awesome, great.
The skills for both of those are big overlap, 80% overlap. Now,
And so what's changed since COVID, and how should organizations be adapting their sales?
So one big thing that has changed is since there's no face-to-face, essentially, then buyers have actually gotten used to and like the virtual selling.
They're liking it now.
They're actually liking it. And the numbers are staggering. 75% of the buyers, when all this is blown over, would rather have virtual interactions with salespeople than face-to-face.
Really? So there's buyers out there right now that are saying, hey, I've really enjoyed this virtual experience, whether from my office at probably a part-time or from my home. They don't need the wine and dine. They don't need the like the fancy restaurants, the presentations in big boardrooms. You're saying is that going to become a bygone thing? And when we look back in the golden age of sales, right, in air quotes, of, hey, that was something we did pre-COVID?
Absolutely.
Really?
And the younger the buyers are, like the millennials. I'm assuming you're a millennial.
I've got the hair of a much older individual. If you're just listening to this, John's got far more hair than I ever will. So, but yeah, I would fall into that millennial category, I think.
So 44% of the millennial buyers never want to talk to a sales rep in person again.
That's not great news for salespeople.
No. Now for the previous generation, the baby boomers, it was 20%. So it's more than doubled. So that one fact has a huge implication for sales. How many salespeople will we need in the future, and what are they going to be doing? Another interesting fact is 40% of the sales managers in our country now are projecting that they will be shifting field sales, in other words, salespeople going around and visiting companies, to virtual sales. So there's all kinds of changes that are going on.
Yeah, why would you hop in your car and go visit 3 clients, throughout the Washington D Metroplex, like where you live right now? When I could hop on and have 8 calls, or probably even a lot more, all in this Zoom setting. I never have to leave, never have to put gas in the car. Much more efficient and much more trackable too, I would imagine.
Oh, absolutely. And so one of the manifestations of that is salespeople now need better tools to help them improve their digital presence. So with no face-to-face, all the buyer sees is what they see on the internet or on our company website. And so salespeople now more than ever need tools like Sales Navigator within LinkedIn, the higher level of LinkedIn. They need Crystal Nose. Are you familiar with Crystal Nose?
I am a little bit. I've never used it, but I understand the concept. But how about you explain what it is to the viewers and listeners out there?
So Crystal Nose is a website, and here's the name comes from Crystal, the woman, has a crystal ball, and she knows you. so
Mm,
So you go to Crystal Nose, you put in the buyer's name, you put in the buyer's personality, the buyer's company, so you know you have the right buyer. And smart software goes all throughout cyberspace using predictive analytics, AI, machine learning techniques. If they've taken a profile like this, that's factored in.
mm-hmm.
It comes back in less than a second and tells you which of the 4 personality styles they are, how to write an email to that person, targeted to that personality style, how to leave a voicemail for that personality style, tuned to it, and how to deal with them on a Zoom call, what you should and shouldn't say. And when you look at how it's helped salespeople, so many of the average salespeople are really great at selling to 25% of the buyers. And the reason is they're great at selling to people like them,
Yes,
personality. And they're not worth a darn selling to the other 3 types.
I totally agree.
Crystal Nose gives you this ability to be just as good selling to the other 3 types. So that's an example of a digital presence tool. And so Sales Navigator using Crystal Nose are 2 great tools. Another is to take advantage of what's called thought leadership. So 92% of buyers will respond to a thought leader. And
Makes sense.
in many smaller companies, the thought leader is probably the CEO or maybe the CTO, right? Somebody who really has deep knowledge about a subject. But just because they're the only one in that company, let's say there's 7 salespeople, anytime the thought leader sends out a blog or whatever it is, if the salesperson then shares it with their prospects, they get that same benefit as if they were the
It's like
leader.
residue that rubs off on that salesperson as
I
well.
like that residue that rubs off. Good.
Feel free, feel free to
Yes.
take that. Interesting. All right. So leveraging thought leadership. Yeah, I really like that. And that makes a lot of sense. If there's a thought leader, let's use who you said before, like Daniel Pink reaches out and says, hey, can I talk to you about X, Y, or Z? You better believe I'm either adjusting time or I'm making time in my calendar to meet with him. That makes a ton of sense. And how salespeople can use that as well. John, I'd love to hear your perspective if there's this major decrease, right, in especially millennial buyers, which you mentioned 44% never want to talk to a salesperson again. There's always been traditionally, at least at some larger organizations, there's almost this inner battle between marketing and sales, right? Marketing wants to take credit for leads, sales wants to take credit for the business, and sometimes at organizations they can really squabble. With all of this, with much of sales shifting towards digital and having to educate the buyer digitally before they actually purchase, how could a sales manager or someone in sales, I don't know, make good relations with marketing? Or what's your advice to people that are saying, hey, we're not in a great relationship with the marketing department right now? How can we fix this because we know we're going to be in a much more robust marketing world?
So in the world you're talking about that exists still in a lot of companies, marketing will say, we give the sales guys these great leads and they don't follow up.
Yeah, they blow it.
And then the salespeople say, hey, come on, they were crappy leads.
They're the worst. Yeah, those leads are crap. Yeah, we're never going to use those.
But now, if you ask the head of marketing in most organizations, what is your objective of everything you do? If they know what they're talking about, they'll say, get qualified leads for salespeople. That's why I'm here.
Mm-hmm.
And when you start this, you're seeing this shift, and that is the head of sales and marketing is now called the head of selling.
Yeah, I've started to see that.
Because selling now is an integration of marketing and sales. And so that you really want one person to be at the head of the whole thing. And so you'll see now marketing essentially taking over at least the first third of the sales cycle. Example, Our 7 salespeople have CRM. And in our company, we know why you should do it. So all of us put in 100% of what we're supposed to put in 100% of the time in near real time. And so we have a brilliant database. We all have sales navigators so we can thoroughly research people. We all have crystal nose so we can figure out the personality style of the buyer before we go to see them. We have marketing automation. So when we get a qualified lead from marketing, the salespeople can go back into the marketing automation platform and see what videos the prospect looked at, which ones they looked at twice, which one they quit looking at halfway through, which ebooks they downloaded. Mm-hmm. And now they're totally ready to reach out. And so they will take all of that information and either send an email or ask them to connect through InMail and Sales Navigator or pick up the phone and call them. And their closing rate's about 80%.
Wow.
And a big part of it is because they get these qualified leads from marketing. Mm-hmm. So in our company, marketing and sales totally integrated together. They must be.
And I think that's such a good point, right? Because prospects, and I don't know what the stat is, but I heard it a while ago where I think it's something to the effect of like 70% of all prospects are doing their own research ahead of time before they even reach out to a salesperson, before they fill out a contact us page. So I think you're just really speaking to the point that you have to have some of these marketing elements really dialed in, and having it on two different islands didn't make much sense before COVID, and it certainly doesn't make any sense either logical sense or dollars and cents moving forward after COVID as well. I really like that, John.
No, I totally agree. And do you remember the song by Kenny Rogers, "Islands in the Stream"?
I do know that song by Island. I will not sing it for those listeners and viewers, but if you want to, the stage is open. But yeah,
well, it's a great song. And what it really says is you can't be islands in the stream. You got to be totally merged together, like lovers. Mm-hmm. And right, so it's the same idea. Sales and marketing have to be totally integrated together.
Love that. Well, this is the first time Kenny Rogers has ever been mentioned on the show, and I love it. I absolutely love it, John. I think this is a great part. Let's transition, and I want to close with the final 5. So these are 5 rapid fire questions that I'll ask and you answer. Sound good?
Absolutely.
All right, John. Do you have a favorite sales related movie?
Oh, I always love the Wolfman of Wall Street.
Wolf of Wall Street, the original or the recent one?
Well, I think the original, with I could just see the two of those guys at dinner and going like this, pounding their chest. Remember that?
Yeah, absolutely. That was a good one. Besides your own, John, what's a favorite sales book?
I would say the probably one of the absolute best, in my opinion, of all time, would be any of the Dale Carnegie books about the power of positive thinking. For example, when I was in the Navy as a young pup, my second submarine was in the shipyard. And it's really boring in the shipyard. So the XO did a lot of training. We actually had a Dale Carnegie trainer come in. And if you remember when we first started, you asked me how I was doing. And I said, primo, fabulous, and mind-blowing.
I do.
But what we learned in that training was if you don't feel so great, just say something like that a couple of times and you're there.
I love it. I love it. Using it in practice all these years later. And around that topic as well, John, what do you know now that you wish you would have known when you first got into your first, let's call it real sales gig?
Oh, probably the resist sending people a proposal via email. So in other words, everything goes well, you're down to the last, and the buyer says, please send me an email, or please send me a proposal. So the absolute worst thing you can do is email the buyer a proposal.
Let's unpack that a little bit. I really like that. So why is that one of the worst things that you can do for the listeners?
Well, who the heck knows what's going to happen to it? The buyer may put it in a folder and think about looking at it sometime later, maybe. The buyer may send it out to 2 other people in the company to have a look and give some input, and they're too busy. The buyer may take a quick look and go, oh, this just isn't exactly what I wanted. In other words, there's this old sales book, you may remember it, called Hope is Not a Strategy. Emailing a proposal and hoping somebody will get back to you is not a very good strategy. So a much better way to go, that works 2/3 of the time, is to send another email to the buyer telling them that you have the proposal ready, and you'll be happy to go over it with them in another Zoom call and propose a couple of dates and suggest if those aren't good, ask the buyer what dates would work for them. That works 2/3 of the time.
And for the other third, and the other third, if they push back and say, no, John, just send me the email, what's your advice and recommendation there?
Well, if it's a typical small company like we'll deal with, I'll say, well, it looks like to me then we're not really serious about this. If when you get more serious, let me know. If it's a big company, the third, where you've got it's a big box retailer or it's the government where there's no choice. You have to send a proposal in by email, then you got to do it.
Gotcha. Yeah, I like that. That's great advice. Yeah,
2/3 of the times you can do it, and it'll work.
I like that. John, give me a favorite purchase of 2020 under $100, and it can be business or personal.
You mean that I've made, or
that you've made, or even a gift that someone's given you under $100.
A favorite purchase. Oh my God, you're not going to believe this. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
All right. So you heard I have a submarine background.
Yes.
Right. And if you're on a submarine, you're about to dive the ship, you sound the diving alarm because you want to warn everybody, hang on, big down angle coming, hang on, secure equipment. If you've ever seen a submarine movie, it sounds like this, ooga,
yes.
Ooga. So it comes as no surprise, I have an authentic submarine diving alarm in my office I bought from a salvage yard recently.
No way.
Here's what it sounds like. You ready?
Ready. That's awesome. That is the first time a real submarine sounding alarm has gone off. That is awesome. I love that. John, are there any executives or other salespeople that you're following along here in 2020 that's a favorite of yours?
Oh gosh, I not so much an individual person. I like big studies, and the reason is, a lot of our sales training is based on neuroscience. You may remember.
Mm-hmm.
That is the activators that will wake up the buyer's brain, or the cognitive biases that help us influence other people positively, of course. And one of them is called the base rate neglect bias. Meaning we humans are apt to make decisions on just the data available to us and not go try to get a whole bunch of other data, especially if it's difficult. An example might be, you may remember from your youth, there may have been an Uncle Joe in your family who was a heavy smoker, and family members would say, Uncle Joe, you got to quit, you're killing yourself with those cigarettes. And Uncle Joe would say, my Aunt Sue lived to 92 and she smoked 2 packs a day, so what's the big deal?
Yep.
Right? Typical.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if Uncle Joe back then could have gone to Google and typed in, how many years do you lose on average if you smoke 2 packs a day, Google will immediately integrate the data from 11 big epidemiology studies and come back and say 11 years. So therefore, I'm not too hot on listening to individual other salespeople or trainers or experts. I love to watch these LinkedIn surveys and McKinsey surveys and Forrester surveys and Gartner surveys where they're giving you a whole bunch of data from a survey of 5,000 salespeople. To me, that's much more valuable data than listening to an individual sales trainer, dude.
Yeah, I really like that. That's a really important reminder. It's easy to get and just follow one voice because you like their style or their presentation, but to take it on a whole, I really like that. John,
so in other words, don't listen to this podcast.
You may have to edit that one out. But yeah, let's go with it anyways. I like it. John, if our listeners want to connect with you, where's the best way that they can do that?
Probably just on our website, AstraStrategies.com. Our most popular offering right now is it's either an hour and a half interactive session on how to sell during COVID.
And that's the webinar, right?
It's an hour and a half webinar with a break or two in between on what's changed based on all these various studies I mentioned, and how does salespeople's behavior need to change. And in many cases, it's pretty significant.
Yeah, that's an important one. And I can attest to the training as well. It's great training, and the webinar is really good as well. So definitely check that out. John, this has been a real treat. I really enjoyed our conversation. It's John Asher with Asher Strategies. John, thanks so much for taking us inside the sales playbook today.
Great to connect with you again, Mark.
Great connecting with you, John.